Hey, everybody. Good morning. We're so happy to have you with us this morning to learn more about NAR's Clear Cooperation Policy. My name is Rachel Foster. I'm the managing broker of the Long and Foster Old Ivy office, and I'm joined today by Sasha Farmer Tripp, who is the managing broker of Story House Real Estate. And we are the chair and vice chair of the 2020 MLS Rules and Regulation master group. Before I go any further, one of the things that I want to say to everybody, we seem to have been maxed out on attendance today for this webinar. So if we're going to send out emails, we've posted something on social media. If you hear of anybody who was not able to get on today, please let them know that this is going to be recorded and available to them probably by lunchtime. We apologize. This was just something that we could not have anticipated. And we'll make sure that everybody gets this. And if they have questions, we'll make sure those questions get answered as well as yours as we do the webinar today. So on behalf of our master group and the board of directors, we'd like to welcome you all here today for this informational webinar on NAR's Clear Cooperation Policy and how it will affect you. As you're probably aware, the National Association of Realtors adopted the Clear Cooperation Policy in November of 2019 at their annual conference. It was implemented to attempt to better control the distribution of listing information and ensure cooperation and compensation on all listings. NAR published a danger report that identified the increasing number of off MLS listings as the biggest threat to the future of the MLS. And so that's where this policy came from. We are going to spend the next hour talking about how the policy is going to affect you. If you want to dig deeper on the why of the policy, NAR has a website. It's nar.realtor/clear cooperation. We encourage you to go there. Lots of frequently asked questions, lots of other supplemental information that will be helpful to you. CAAR has also created a resource page of information that is going to have our frequently asked questions, because how we implement it is going to be different from how Northern Virginia or Richmond or even GAR and some of our other surrounding associations are implementing it. So please make sure that you visit that site. That URL is going to be available to you on the very last slide that Sasha shows you. So make sure that you jot that down, because that's going to be an important resource for you. And again, a recording of this webinar is going to be available on that website. So it'll be available to all of you and to anybody who was not able to get on today. We know that a lot of you are going to have questions about the policies that we're discussing today. Please type your questions in the questions/chat box that you'll find on the right-hand side. And Abby and I will go through and at the end of Sasha's presentation, and we will start to answer those for you. Please know that if we don't get to answer one of your questions, we will make sure that we add that to the frequently asked questions and get those to you by early next week. It may be that we just don't have time to answer everybody's questions. It may be, quite frankly, it's something that we need to do a little more investigation on, and we will definitely do that. So be assured that your questions will get answered, and we will provide those to you by Monday or Tuesday. All right, so I'm going to hand everything over to Sasha now, and she is going to fill us in on what this policy is all about.
Awesome, thanks, Rachel. Okay, everybody. I am excited to present this information today, because I will say that when NAR passed this policy to begin with, I was super leery of how this will change business for myself personally and for our fellow co-broke agents. And I think you will be pleased to see that the MLS committee and CAAR and a bunch of, the board of directors, we have tried to come up with a really good solution that allows us, in most cases, to keep doing business similarly to how we were doing it before, but just with a different MLS variation of it. So I'm excited to present it today. I'll probably use myself as an example sometimes, because for anybody that follows, our listings, we have been doing quite a few coming soons. It was a big part of our business practice, so I'm happy to use myself as an example. And some of those examples will be what not to do anymore, because NAR has sort of broadcasted some different variations of what's acceptable at this point. So I'm going to dig right into the content. If you have questions, type them into the side. I'm trying to follow it, but I'm also trying to present at the same time. So bear with me, because we may have to hold some of them till the end, which there will be appropriate time at the end of this for. So the MLS Clear Cooperation Policy, you've probably heard of this. Hopefully you've heard of it by now. This is something that NAR passed or adopted back in November of 2019, and they have decided that as of May 1st, it will be implemented officially and be expected to be adhered to. And so this presentation is basically how CAAR is working to make sure that our members know how to do it, know what our rules are, and so you can see how it's been added to CAAR's policy that we currently have. So the MLS Clear Cooperation Policy, if you have not seen the language before, is on the screen right now. It reads that within 1 business day of marketing a property to the public, the listing broker must submit the listing to the MLS to provide cooperation with other MLS participants. So I'm going to stop there and kind of break that down a little bit. To digest that, what that means is if you had been doing coming soon, or if you had been doing advertising or sending things out to an email list of your brokers that you work with quite often in town, or if you had been posting things on social media or putting a coming soon sign in the yard, what this means is that as soon as you start publicly marketing that listing, we are now being asked to get that property in the MLS. And so you're going to see how CAAR has come, I think, really, really quickly shifted and adjusted to be able to make this possible in a way that will still allow us to do the same sort of practice we were doing and still allow a property to be marketed before it's totally ready for showing. But I want to break it down so everybody's very clear on what it means. Public marketing, this is per the NAR guideline on your screen, public marketing includes but is not limited to flyers in windows, yard signs. So if you have a coming soon rider, if you put something in the front yard telling people that it's on the way, digital marketing on public facing websites, brokerage website display, including IDX and VOW, digital communication marketing, so email blasts, and then multi-brokerage and listing sharing networks, or applications available to the general public. So this basically means if you are blasting it out to some of your clients, if you were sending text messages to some of your favorite friends or your top, your top buyers that are in your pool of buyers, if you were sending it out to the brokers that you've co-brokered a lot of deals with, if you are advertising it outside of your company as a property that's about to be ready for sale but's not quite ready yet, this applies to you. So this is now saying that within 1 business day of you sending any of that out, putting that sign in the yard, doing any of those practices, it needs to be added to the MLS. So when that came down from NAR, a lot of people panicked because a lot of people said, well, the whole idea of coming soon is because it's not quite ready, or we're finishing the painting, we're finishing the landscaping, and we don't want it to start accruing days on market right away, and it's not truly ready to be seen right away. So I feel like CAAR has been extremely proactive in trying to come up with a way to help us adjust what we currently have within CAAR and adjust our MLS to be able to adhere to this, but at the same time allow us to keep doing business. The policy will be enforced by NAR beginning May 1st, by May 1st, this is when CAAR is also expecting people to abide by and cooperate with the Clear Cooperation Policy. So a lot of people panicked, we're in the middle of a quarantine, business is changing, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. People panic that, is this appropriate time to do it? NAR, we reached out to NAR. NAR has said that they are going to continue moving forward on this. So in just a couple of weeks, this will be enacted and enforceable. And so our expectation to CAAR members, this is not because CAAR wants to add a bunch of extra work to your life. Our expectation is that we will adhere to the NAR cooperation policy as of that time. There are a couple resources I want to point to. Your broker should be knowledgeable about this. So obviously your broker is always your first point of contact when you have questions about this. However, CAAR has a really great website, the caar.com/clear-cooperation. That's a great website that will talk to you about whatever changing policies and procedures we have. This will be implemented, and we have kind of thought through as much as we can think through for right now. And just know that, like, all of the agents now, all of CAAR, this is new to everybody. So we are kind of learning as we go. We have really thought through every possible thing that we can predict will come up. But as everybody knows, anytime you implement something new or you have a new procedure or new rule, there will be things that are outside of our imagination that pop up, and we will be addressing those things as they come. But that's a great website to go to kind of find out what CAAR is doing in response. And then, of course, this very long link is the NAR website that just describes what clear cooperation is, what it means, what it was intended to do. The general intention of NAR with this policy was that as realtors, it's very embarrassing to us when your client calls you and they say, hey, we saw a sign in our next door neighbor's yard that it's going to go for sale. Can you tell us more about that property? And we can't, because we go to look it up and it can't be found. We have to look at Zillow to see if maybe it's on Zillow. We have to look through all the different resources online. We start Googling, maybe you go on Craigslist, social media, you start calling your realtor friends to see if they know about it. The idea is that if the public is able to find out about a property that is coming soon, that is going to be, from a participant in the MLS, not a for sale by owner, obviously, we cannot control those. But if the public finds out about a property that's coming up, we want the realtors to be able to be educated on where that property is, what it is, what price range it's going to be in, all of those things. So that is the danger report reported to NAR that this is our biggest threat coming. And so this clear cooperation policy, as Rachel said, is in response to that. So that when a person calls you and says, hey, we saw coming soon, or hey, we saw this blasted on Facebook the other day, can you tell us more about it? You, as a licensed, informed, intelligent, educated, expert realtor, will actually know that this property is for sale and will be able to tell them about it. And not only that, you will be offered clear cooperation and compensation for that, because it will be listed in the MLS. There will also be future training events. Obviously, we're recording this webinar so you guys can replay it later. We will take your questions at the end and we will do our best. There will be things that we don't know the answers to. I'm not an NAR clear cooperation expert, nor is Rachel, nor is Abby. We are just doing our best within the framework of what NAR has given us, knowing that it has not completely rolled out yet. So bear with us. You saw the way we've rolled this into CAAR procedures is that we have added the clear cooperation policy language, which is that is mandated by NAR, that we adopt this and roll this into our practices in some way. We have had to make a change to our own procedures because previously CAAR's rule was that it needs that a listing must be entered within 48 hours to the MLS. We are now saying it must be entered within 1 business day, because that needs to remain in accordance with the NAR rule. We can't have a rule that is in conflict, or it's frowned upon to have a rule that is in conflict with NAR that's passed on behalf of CAAR. So you will now see that listings are required to be entered within 1 business day. And then I'm going to roll into sort of what that looks like and why this may not be as traumatic as people perceived it at some point to be. We have worked really hard at CAAR and with the MLS committee to roll out a new status in the MLS for this specifically, because I think when a lot of people heard that this was happening, their first concern was, well, we are not ready to put those houses into the active status. That's the whole point. They would be inactive if they were ready to be shown and they were ready to go, if they were market ready. We're not ready to put them in active status. So this whole thing sounds panic worthy, but CAAR has made an adjustment and has adopted something that we hope will overcome a lot of the objections to this. We are creating a new coming soon status. You cannot find it in the MLS yet, but it is on its way. We've been working, every day with Paragon to get that rolling out during a somewhat already chaotic time in our businesses. But the coming soon status is for listings that are getting ready to be shown. So you're doing your final paint, you're doing your final landscaping, somebody's cleaning up, you can't get your photographer out, whatever that may be. And listings that are being pre-marketed, but that are not yet available for appointments. And that's a pretty significant point to all of this. These are for houses that are not actively available to see and to be shown. As soon as your house is actively available to see and to be shown, it belongs in the active status. That is the definition and the purpose of the active status, as is suggested by the name of the status. However, if it is not yet ready, we now have a coming soon status that will roll out, and it will mirror the active status. So it will look just like what you're used to. It'll be a separate section, in the drop down or the toggle down in the MLS, you'll be able to choose coming soon instead of active. So that will not look any, I mean, it will look different because it's a new status, but as you roll it out and as you fill it out, it will have the same questions and data and entry expectations as the active status. A listing agreement must be in place, which hopefully will be common sense to most of you, that, you know, if you are putting it in the MLS, you need to have a listing agreement, because if it then sells and you don't have a listing agreement with your seller, you are now obligated, you know, and you don't have a seller that's obligated to that commission. So it needs to have a listing agreement in place, as always has been the rule, to put it in the MLS. The client must sign an appendix. So there is a document that is being created to make sure your client understands what this means, and that it means that it's not ready to be shown yet. And it also means that it is not filtering out and feeding out to all the places that an active listing will filter out to. So that is an appendix that will be rolling out at the same time as this section of the MLS. To be considered an active status, it will be viewable by all of the subscribers to the MLS. So all of the other realtors in town will be able to view the coming soon status, just like they can view the pending status and they can view the active status. You know, they will be able to see that this property is there and it's in existence. So if somebody calls about one of these properties or they see a sign in the yard, we will all now have access to the information to be able to educate them about what's going on with that house. The one thing to note about this, the difference really between the coming soon, or there's a couple of differences. The difference between coming soon and active is, number one, the coming soon properties do not automatically feed out to all the IDX feeds. The idea behind this is that coming soon is not meant to start accumulating days on market, because the house is not actively yet on the market or available to be seen. So it will not automatically feed out to all the IDX feeds. However, if you choose, you know, just like you're choosing to put a coming soon sign in the yard, just like you might be blast emailing it to different agents in town, just like you are welcome to put it on your website. You are welcome to have it on a section. You know, you are welcome to feed it out. If you have List Hub, or if you have one of the aggregators or the syndicators, it can be fed out to other places. It will just not automatically be fed out by CAAR. And just remember, when you feed out to those places on your own, for example, if you put something on your own on Zillow, it will start, you know, tracking the history of that property. So you may start seeing days on market accumulate on Zillow where they are not accumulating in the MLS. So just be aware of that. We need to look into that. Obviously, we will have to see what that looks like when it comes, but you will have to be responsible for deciding whether you want it to populate out to those other places, because we are not making that decision for you. In coming soon, it will just be in the coming soon status in the MLS, and that is where it will be populated. As I said before, it does not accumulate days on market. So this is a good opportunity for you to finish your final preparations, to still offer compensation and cooperation to other brokers, but without the negative implications. If your seller perceives negative implications, or, you know, without it stagnating on the market or starting to accrue those days on market. Now, this is not something we could do forever, because that would kind of game the whole system of the MLS, and that would sort of break down the data in the MLS. If you could list it in coming soon and have it available up until it sells and it has 0 days on market, that is not the purpose of this. And so what you will see is that it can remain in coming soon for 14 days. So don't put this house on the coming soon status 2 months before you're thinking about listing it, and tell your seller that you can start building urgency and build interest, because on day 14, it will automatically change into active status, or you need to move it back into withdrawn or hold or whatever. You need to get it out of that status, because automatically it will roll into active. So 14 days is the maximum that you can be marketing this property before it's ready for showings, essentially. And you are offering cooperative compensation, and you're offering co-brokerage to our fellow brokers. Now, the thing that we need to be super clear about, and the clearest and most finite rule of the coming soon status, is that the property may not be shown. So if it is being shown, it is actively available for sale, so it belongs in the active status. It may not be shown in the coming soon status. This is the way to prevent gaming of the system, and it's a way to make sure that we are, you know, practicing fair housing, and we're allowing equal opportunity to everybody to see this property. We cannot pick and choose. If it's in coming soon, that means there are no showings occurring on this property. As soon as a showing starts, you know, what's okay for one to show should be okay for all to show. And that is the moment in time that you manually need to move it from coming soon into active. And I think probably the biggest place where you could find potential complaints or violations of this will be people leaving properties and coming soon and allowing, their friend broker, or, allowing somebody, one of their own buyers, to go see the house, but not allowing anybody else to go see the house. That is not the intent, and that is the exact opposite of what NAR has passed this policy for. So that is not what coming soon is going to be used for, and you will see that CAAR has implemented and is bringing on some violations and some fines tied to that to make sure that this is handled properly and make sure that we are, participating in fair housing for all. So they may not be shown in the coming soon status. If you choose to show it, you make it active in the MLS. It's very simple. If someone calls you, and we know this happens to all of us, you have something coming soon, you're trying to finish preparations, and maybe the neighbor gets word that it's coming soon and they want to buy it for their parents. They want to see that house. The role at that time is either to tell them that they are able to see that house when the market can see the house, or yes, they're welcome to come see the house tomorrow, but the property needs to be moved into the active status so that everybody knows that showings will be able to begin on that property tomorrow. So that is probably the hardest, and that is probably the one rule that is potentially operating differently than how some of us were practicing, but that is the intention of NAR, is to make sure that there is fair and equal cooperation and compensation for all. So you will see there, the rest of these slides, quite a few of these slides are just talking about where you see the updates in the CAAR policy about this. Obviously, there's a new update to the active status is defined as a property that is available for showing and for purchase. Now, if you have a property that your seller just says, hey, we can't do showings for the next couple of days because somebody's really sick or my family's in town, okay, that is okay. We're not saying that every single showing must be acceptable and arranged and accommodated at every single opportunity. But what we are saying is, once a property is available for showings, it goes into the active status. If the property is not available for showing, it's allowed to remain in the coming soon status. And then again, as always was the case, if you're going to be inactive for 2 months, if your sellers say, like, we cannot show this property for the next 2 months because we're uncomfortable with quarantine and we don't want a bunch of people through the house, we need to know that if it is inactive, it's available for showing. It is not appropriate to have that property listed and then unable to show. And that, I guess that has probably always been the case, that you should not have a property that cannot be sold sitting in the active status. So that we have updated some of the definitions. Another update that we've made is just an update to the seller opt-out form. This is sort of all grouped in with clear cooperation, but it's kind of very sideline, very small items that probably most members won't really even notice. We've updated the seller opt-out form to include an additional checkbox for clients. And it says, I understand that and acknowledge that by excluding my listing from the MLS, my broker is not able to publicly market to agents outside of the brokerage. There's a little typo in that. That typo is not reflected on the form, I assure you. The opt-out form is basically saying, if you are going to decide not to put your house in the MLS at all, that at this point, if you're not putting it in the MLS at all, the broker cannot publicly market to the world. We cannot, as a member of CAAR, as a participant of CAAR, we can't send emails about it, put it on our Facebook page. If we're not in the MLS, that listing must stay true to just your brokerage to see. So that is a in-house brokerage only listing. As soon as it gets publicly marketed outside, because we are subscribers and members of CAAR, because this is a new policy for CAAR, it must be in the MLS. So that is where we will start to see a little divergence from what some people had been doing. And again, your seller is welcome to choose that or to opt that or to select that option for themselves. But our expectation is just that they are going to be initialing this additional section of the appendix so that we make sure that they understand exactly what it is that they have signed up to do in that situation. Other updates that are a little more nebulous, or not nebulous, that are a little less impactful to our business that we may not even notice, but we need to know do exist in the background at CAAR. Additional MLS rules and regulations updates tied to this. These are all effective May 1st. We've just updated some language, so I would say to refer to that if you're, if you like to know every word and you're an MLS studier, then go take a look at section 1.0 listing procedures, because obviously you're going to see these new terms reflected in there. 1.2.2 exempted listings, 1.3 authorized listings, and 1.3.1 comparable listings. So again, if you like to know word for word what's in our policies and procedures manual, those things have changed a little bit to envelop this new policy. There's an addition of the coming soon status, which is significant. That's an entirely new section of the MLS that we did not have before. The new definition of the active status to include that it needs to be available for showing and for sale to be an active status. Updating that appendix on the seller opt-out form that we've already mentioned. And then Appendix F is handling the fines for when this is not adhered to properly. So we are going to get to that right now. Fines. So, I always like to, as just a participant of CAAR, somebody on the MLS committee, someone who served on the board in the past, I always like to issue a reminder that fines are not meant, well, I can't say that they're not meant to reprimand something being done wrong. They are not meant to be difficult. They are certainly not meant to fund CAAR by any stretch of the imagination. They are implemented because we have been told that these are best practices for our business, and this is a mandate from NAR coming down to us. And so we are implementing fines to make sure that what one person is doing correctly, everyone is expected to do correctly. And in a lot of cases, they begin to be implemented very softly so that it gives everybody an adjustment period and a learning period, knowing that we're all new to this. A lot of people will make mistakes unintentionally, and fines are generally in place for the person that we now know has the intention of not necessarily participating in the spirit or the intention of the policy that has been passed down. So what you will see is that if you violate clear cooperation, there is a fine, a hierarchy of fines, as there is with quite a few other things in the MLS, $250, $500, and $1,000. And if you violate the same thing a fourth time, you may be subject to the suspension of your MLS privileges. And so what that looks like is if, you're trying to kind of ease into this and figure it all out, you're doing your very best, and you're trying to get into the coming soon and make sure that you have not somehow accidentally advertised it or talked about it or shared the word about it before putting it in the MLS, or without putting it in the MLS within one business day, there is a fine hierarchy that will come into place to make sure that people understand how this is meant to be done. The immediate fine that can be implemented and levied would be if we find, or if CAAR is told, or if a fellow broker reports, or co-brokerage agent reports that you are allowing showings at properties that are in coming soon. Because again, the entire intention and motivation behind the coming soon status is to allow us to build urgency, allow us to finish preparations, allow us to spread the word to our fellow brokers, but it is not meant for us to selectively pick and choose who gets to go see the house before it's, actively marketed in the active section of the MLS and pressed out to all of the IDX feeds via the MLS. So the immediate fine will be levied at the time that CAAR is reported, a fellow broker reports you. If we are hearing, or not me, I'm not part of this process, but if CAAR is hearing that there are showings occurring in the active or in the coming soon status, and the property is not moved to active, that is when immediate fines will come into play, because I think the intention behind it is that is a pretty egregious mistake. We all know coming soon has a definition, and that means it is not available yet. And active has a definition, and that means that it is available for showing. So continuously showing properties and getting caught showing properties that are in the coming soon status is directly in conflict with what NAR has passed, what CAAR is now passing, and it seems appropriate in that case to see that an immediate fine is enacted. The good news is that we are allowing an adjustment period, because again, we are in the middle of kind of unusual times, unprecedented times. CAAR never ever has an intention of being in conflict with you being able to do business. You know, we want to make sure that you're able to do business, but we also need to make sure that you are following the policies and the procedures as adopted by NAR. So it's a fine line to walk. There will be a period of implementation, rollout time, adjust to the new policy time, and you will see that the fines will kick in and begin being enacted on July 1st and beyond that. So it gives you 60 days to get used to the policy, to get used to NAR, to get used to the coming soon status, to make sure you know how to use coming soon status. Don't use this as a period to game the system. You know, there's not really gaming of the system. NAR has still said, we don't want to see a coming soon sign in the yard and have the public calling us and have our fellow co-broker agents not able to tell the public about that property. So NAR says May 1 is the date. We are making sure that you are not getting hit with fine after fine after fine while you're trying to adjust and learn the new process. But again, this coming soon status should really make it such that a lot of the building urgency and building excitement and finishing the projects in the house should still be able to get done. And it should be very easy, a very simple process for us without a whole lot of change to what we're doing, but while still getting business done and business transacted in the background. And so for more information, I know that is a very quick overview of a pretty new system. I hope that in explaining it and hearing what CAAR has done to adjust to it will give you some faith that it is not the most cumbersome thing. You know, I feel like when I heard this, I was very put off by it, and it felt like it was a dramatic change to how I was doing business. And in truth, it is a change to how I was doing business, but it still allows us to practice the same business intentions that we had, which is to gain market exposure while the property is being finalized, while the property is getting ready, and to get some of that, you know, interest built so that when it does go live, we're able to hopefully condense things a little bit for the seller and not have them drag on, you know, on and on and on for weeks and have showings that kind of stagnate out for weeks at a time. That was our intention behind it. This 100% still allows us to do exactly the type of business that we were doing before, but doing it completely in cooperation and, you know, but while adhering to the NAR policy that has come out. For more information, again, I'm going to reference that CAAR website, caar.com/clear-cooperation. We are going to have FAQs there. What we're doing is we will be taking questions at the end of this webinar. We're going to answer as much as we can. Again, bear with us, Abby, Rachel, myself. We are by no means absolute experts in this. We have studied it a lot. We have done everything we can to know as many, you know, to have thought of as many loopholes or as many kind of strange scenarios that we could. But there will be questions we don't have the answers to. And there will be morphing and changing from NAR, as there always is, as a new policy rolls out. So as updates come, we will be putting them on that website, and we will answer any unanswered questions by way of that website. And again, this is a recording that will be accessible to you. Anybody who was not able to join in today, unfortunately, we got capped out, which is a good problem to have. We've got a lot of visitors and a lot of interest in this, and people are trying to stay up to date with what's going on. Anybody who was not able to listen in will have access to the slides if they don't want to listen to me drone on for half an hour, but they'll also have access to the webinar recording. And of course, this website will answer any remaining questions that we are not able to answer for you today. So, and that will be available by Monday at the latest. So we're super appreciative that you joined us today. We know it's a busy time, it's a crazy time. We know people are probably battling their kids for internet exposure while they're homeschooling and who knows what. We are so thankful that you're here today. I want to turn it over at this point for any questions that may have popped up in the questions box, any questions that have come up. And I'm going to turn it over to Rachel and Abby and myself just to answer anything that you guys might have at this time about the new policy or system or MLS status. So Rachel, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sasha. And I just want to repeat that the URL www.caar.com/clear-cooperation, it's going to stay on the screen. That's going to be your best friend. So make sure that you reference that. Write it down right now if you get a chance. We are going to now start working through your questions. The first question that we had come up was, what does pre-marketed mean? I thought if it was marketed to the public in any way, it has to be in the MLS within 1 business day. And that is true. If it is marketed to the public in any way, social media, flyers, a sign in the yard, an email out to all of the agents in CAAR. If it's marketed in any way, it must be in the MLS within 1 business day. The only exception to that rule is the agents within your own brokerage. So keep that in mind, but you're absolutely right. 1 business day. Our next question is, are virtual tours or videos not permitted during the coming soon? And that's not something that we thought about when we were working through this, because most of the policies that we were writing were done before we knew what coronavirus was. So I think that's something that we're going to have to talk about offline.
Agreed.
All right. But we will definitely get back to you with a question on that, with an answer on that. Next, will we get an alert? And we have 2 of these questions. Will we get an alert from CAAR when we're at day 14? I believe yes. I'm seeing
That's
Abby
the
shaking her head
intention.
yes.
That's the
Okay.
intention. We're still working out the system, but yes, that's what we'll work towards.
So we will make sure if you have your property incoming soon that we let you know on day 14 that it is about to become, it's about to be moved into the active status. The next question that we have here is, will the coming soon MLS number be the same as the active MLS number and be such that we can email the listing sheet containing the information and photos if available?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. All right, moving right along. Can we assume that a virtual showing is a showing? Okay, so that's similar to the question we had before, and we will definitely discuss and get you an answer as soon as we can. The next question I'm going to open to everybody. What about a sight unseen during the coming soon status? So if you have buyers who are writing an offer without coming to see the house at all.
We had kind of discussed that a little bit.
Mhm.
And, you know, my interpretation is always that, you know, if it's not, I mean, if it has not been shown, it has not been shown, and anybody is always welcome to write an offer sight unseen. I think if suddenly properties start going straight from coming soon to under contract, I imagine that there will be some research done to make sure that that was what happened, that it was sight unseen. But in my opinion, I don't see where NAR or I don't see where anything could prohibit someone from still writing an offer, and from a seller could still certainly accept an offer without that buyer having visited the home. Abby, do you have any, I know we talked about this way back, but do you have anything to add to that?
No, what you described is right on the money.
Agreed. All right, so moving on. The next question is about pocket listings / those that aren't intended for the MLS. And the question is, did we just say on this webinar that they are not appropriate for posts on social media? And yes, that is true. If your client has said that this property cannot be put into the MLS, that means that it cannot be marketed publicly in any way. No social media,
Right,
no
and just
flyers.
a reminder, oh, sorry, Rachel, I don't mean to interrupt.
No,
I can't see anybody's face, so I can't tell when people are done talking. Just a reminder, this isn't like CAAR's fun idea that we are rolling out. That is the NAR mandate. So that's not something that we have decided is just a no-no. That would be directly in conflict with what NAR is saying is appropriate at this point in time.
Absolutely. All right, so the next question, can a home be listed for sale with a tenant in place if the tenant is not allowing people to come into the home due to COVID-19? They have recorded a video tour instead. I'm not sure I fully understand the question, except that it goes back to the idea of virtual tours as showings.
I
Yeah,
would
I
assume
think
that
we're
that
going to have to
listing would be
rely on,
active.
correct. And I think we're going to have to rely on NAR to get, I mean, so much has changed just in the couple of weeks since we knew that this was absolutely going to be, I mean, we knew it was rolling out, but things have changed since this has all passed. I imagine we're going to be relying on an NAR update to specifically address like the COVID issues as tied to this. And my hope would be that it would also come out before May 1st. So I do think we're going to have to wait for a little bit more guidance on some of these things.
The next question, what if people do use the 60-day period between May 1st and July 1st as gaming time? So you mentioned that Sasha, that it was not meant to be a time to game the system, but what if they use it as gaming time? My perspective on that is that if we can't prevent people from trying to game the system. What we can do is when people break the rules set in place by this policy during that 60-day period, we can reach out to them and let them know this is a period of education for all of us. So we will be reaching out to people to say, hey, just so you know, this new policy is in place, and this is the policy that you broke. Normally, my guess is that what we'll say is normally a fine would be levied at this point, just so that they know that they're aware of what comes with that outside of that implementation period. Do y'all have anything to add?
Well, I would add to that, just remember that just because you're not having a fine implemented by CAAR doesn't mean that you're still in violation of CAAR procedures and NAR procedures. So I guess at a certain point, that is a business decision that some people will choose to make, as people can always choose to, work in conflict of the policies that their, mother or parent organizations have mandated of them. Just because you're not getting a fine yet, because CAAR is trying to have a soft landing of this, doesn't mean that you're not very clearly violating the policies that are put in place for your cooperation with other agents in our association. So certainly that's always a personal choice that you can make.
So this next question we've had come up a number of times, if not today, but as we've been processing this. If we list a coming soon in anticipation of being ready in 2 weeks, and then something happens and it's not going to be ready, what do we do? Do we remove it from the coming soon status? Do we put it on hold? What do we do with that property? Sasha, do you want to address that?
I mean, when we had talked about this, and again, this is kind of trying to think through every possible circumstance, and we agree this could very, very likely come up. The intention of that, I believe, you would put on hold. You would remove it from the coming soon status, because again, coming soon, the maximum is 14 days. So if it just sits in there, it goes to active, which is what you're trying to prevent from happening. So you could always put it on hold or remove. You could stop the marketing of it in any way. But that would be our recommendation. The recommendation is kind of like, to be fairly certain that you're going to be ready to go in about 2 weeks, obviously knowing that things can change at any moment, but be fairly certain, because yeah, the maximum it can sit in there is 2 weeks. There would not be any additional days that it's allowed, even for a strange circumstance. So yeah, at that point it would move into another status.
And if I could add a platform clarification, once it's in a coming soon status, it can only go to active or be withdrawn or put on hold. It can't go back to coming. If it goes active, it can't go back to coming soon. And in a coming soon status, it cannot go to provisional or partial.
Yeah, and you can't put it in coming soon again and again, take it off a week later, put it back in coming soon. So just know this is like a 14-day nice cushion of time to do what you can do with it. But if there are things that, strange scenarios that pop up, it's just a maximum of 14 days in that status. So appreciate the 14 days that you had.
If a brokerage belongs to many MLSs, will the listing have to be put in all MLSs within 1 business day, or is it sufficient to place it in the main members MLS? So the rules or the way this policy is being implemented changes from MLS to MLS, but that particular policy does not change. That NAR policy of it must be in the MLS within 1 business day. It has to be in every MLS that you're a member of. So make sure that it's not just your primary MLS. Okay, anything to add? The next question that we have here is, if I have a listing agreement with a seller, but the property is not ready and won't be ready for several weeks, so it's not even in the coming soon status, and then I meet a buyer who expresses interest in the property that matches my future listing, is it a violation of this policy to tell them that I will have something coming which might fit their needs?
Trying to digest the question.
Yes.
My interpretation of that, well, gosh, I don't know, that we need clarification probably from NAR on that.
That feels like public marketing to me.
Yeah,
To
how
tell
did
someone,
they find out? I guess they could find out from somebody walking down the street, or they could, yeah, or they didn't find out about that specific property. I guess you're saying they just matched the criteria. That feels like you're marketing to the public if you're telling someone that is a consumer. We'll get clarification on that.
Yeah.
it's interesting. I had an agent when I went over this with my agents. I had someone ask, what if they're just doing things where if you pass by as a neighbor, you see that they're clearly getting ready to do something in their home. And so somebody starts asking about that. And, there's nothing that you can do to prevent those kinds of questions. I have known an agent before who owned one of the dumpsters that people could clean out their house and dump it into, and they put their branding on the side of the dumpster so that during the period of time that their clients were cleaning out their house, everybody who was driving by was seeing that it was paid for by this particular agent. If you did that, that would be considered public marketing. But if they're just doing a lot of work on their house and the suspicion is that they're about to list it, that's not something that that is considered public marketing. Let's see. What if the seller does not want it in the MLS? Are you saying we cannot? I'm losing the rest of that question and I'm not sure how to open it up. Oh, wait, here we go. Are you saying we cannot market it to the public in any fashion? That is correct. If it's not in the MLS, it cannot be public marketed. It can be sent to agents within your own brokerage, but it cannot be marketed to the public in any way. And that's what the appendix, is it appendix I? I've gotten those mixed up, but that is what the appendix says. So your client who says, I absolutely do not want it in the MLS, is going to have to sign the appendix that says, I understand that if it's not in the MLS, it does not get publicly marketed. Oh, it's appendix A. Is that right?
The opt-out is appendix A.
Right. Okay. When you say entered into the MLS, does it mean as an active status? Either. So with that rule of within one business day of marketing, it either has to be in as active or as coming soon. Okay. So the buyer didn't see the home, but did their agent. We may need a little bit more information on that question, Donna, only because it referenced something that we were talking about that I'm not sure of. So if you could give us some more information, that would be helpful. If the listing is withdrawn, can it go back to coming soon? No. You can't go back into the coming soon status. And then the owners will tell people without telling you. And the truth is on that one, the owners aren't licensees and we can't control what they do. This only affects us as licensees. So you're absolutely right. Let's see. We've got our final question, it looks like, unless anybody wants to add one. So you said sight unseen going under contract, so the purchaser didn't see it, but their agent did. No, it may be that the way I took that question is that neither the agent nor the buyer saw that house. They just knew that it was a house in a neighborhood or in a particular part of town that they wanted, and when it went on the market and they couldn't, it was incoming soon, or they couldn't be here, that they went ahead and wrote the contract sight unseen. If it's incoming soon, the agent would not have been able to see it. All right, and our last question, unless anybody adds one, I listed a property back in February and they would not let me take photos, show it, market it after the COVID-19 quarantine. Do I need to get the Appendix A signed?
Marketed. So it's already in the
No,
MLS.
I mean, it's still yeah, it's in the MLS. The Appendix A is really if you're not going into the MLS. So it sounds like they are in the MLS. And maybe the question would be better asked, like, is it okay that I have an active property in the active section of the MLS that no one's allowed to go see? And I would refer to Abby to answer that.
All
There's
we've had some
an active listing in the MLS that is not able to be seen.
Right, because the tenant or because somebody says, I'm not interested in anybody physically walking in this house right now, but it's still sitting inactive in the MLS.
I would encourage a virtual tour as an option. But if right now, if that question came up, the active definition does not mention that it must be available to be seen. Come May 1st, it would include to be seen and to be sold.
And we got some clarification. It is not in the MLS right now.
Oh.
So if your intention is to add it after May 1st or not add it after May 1st, then definitely do the opt-out form.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're gonna advertise it and continue to try to sell it but not put it in the MLS after May 1st, you need to opt out. Something to keep in mind about May 1st, by the way, and that one business day rule, and this just happens to be fortuitous for everybody. May 1st falls on a Friday, so the next business day is the 4th on Monday. So something to keep in mind. All right, we have a few more questions that have been added. So if the seller is marketing the property, then we are not required to put it in the active status. That's correct. The seller is not a licensee.
Oh, and can I add to that? But just remember, if the seller, that's essentially a for sale by owner. If you have no listing, or I mean, you have to kind of define what's going on there. But yes, the seller can always tell anybody they want about the house. But is it a for sale by owner, or do you have a listing agreement? In which case, have they opted not to be in the MLS at that point? My hope would be that if you have a relationship with them and if you're setting up a listing with them, that you've got a listing agreement and they would, be allowing you to market that property at that point. Otherwise, it's potentially a for sale by owner, I would think, at that moment.
What if a seller shows a neighbor a property during the coming soon status? I think my answer is the same, because they aren't a licensee. They're able to do that. They're not prevented from doing that. Let's see.
We can't prevent them from having parties or inviting people. I mean, we can never prevent a seller from really doing anything in their own home.
Exactly. What if offers are presented while incoming soon? Or the seller has active but no showing till X date? So I'll answer that second question. Seller has active but no showing until X date. We worked on changing the definition of active to mean that it is available for showing and available for purchase. So if it is in as active, it cannot have that caveat of no showing until date X, because the definition of active is that it's available to be shown and to be purchased. And then what if offers are presented during the coming soon? As long as there have been no showings, there can be offers presented during the coming soon status. Let's see, how about agent requests for listings not listed for client? I'm not sure I understand that one. So if you can give us more information, or Sasha, if you or
is that my reading of that is, I send out an email. I have a buyer looking for Forest Lakes up to 400,000 first floor master, and you have a listing that is going to be up and coming that matches that criteria. I mean, in my purview, which may be absolutely wrong, but in my purview, nothing would prevent me from saying to Rachel, hey, Rachel, I'm going to have a listing coming up in Forest Lakes in about a month with a first floor master. I'm not having Rachel go show it. I'm not sending her property information. I'm not putting it on Facebook. I'm not putting a sign in the yard. I don't believe, generic information about neighborhoods or things that might match your criteria. I don't believe that there's anything that NAR has put out prohibiting that. And I could be wrong, but I think if you have a specific property and you're sending them photos and you're asking them to forward it along to their buyer who's just reached out, then that's public marketing of a specific property. And that would sort of trigger all of these things to begin needing to start happening.
Or if Sasha told me about that property in Forest Lakes and my immediate response was, oh gosh, you have it coming on in a month, but my folks can only be here next week. Is there a way you can sneak us in? Right, then all of a sudden, we have gone into the violations of this policy. Let's see. Agents write an email asking if anyone has a property coming soon, meeting certain criteria. Is that allowed? Okay, so we just addressed that. What if it is on hold? That may be what they're talking about. What about those that are coming soon now? Okay, so two separate questions, and I'm not sure, Donna, because it referenced something that we were talking about a few minutes ago, I'm not exactly sure what that could have been. So if you can give us more information on that so that we don't miss that. What about those that are coming soon now? If you have a sign in the yard right now, but it's not in the MLS, if you have sent out an email right now to all of the agents in CAAR, but it's not in the MLS, if you have posted on Facebook, but it's not in the MLS, as of May 1st, you have one business day to get it into the MLS, either as coming soon or as active. Let's see. Okay, what if it were just in a partial listing while waiting for seller to finish cleaning up the house? That's not a violation of anything, correct? I think I would have to understand what was happening while it was in the partial listing.
Right, if it's being marketed, then that would be if it's being marketed, it's got to be in the coming soon status so that every other agent and every other firm could find it.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, someone says, I think we should be careful to not make any allusions that an agent could tell a seller to show the property instead of the agent to avoid the problem. That's true. Certainly, if the agent were the one initiating, pushing the seller to show the property, that then comes back to the licensee being the one who is breaking the policy. So there are a couple of statements and questions here that come like several minutes after our conversation, so they're separated from what we were talking about, and I'm not entirely sure. I do see one that says, I thought that was prohibited since she isn't in your brokerage. I'm pretty sure that one is when Sasha was pointing out that she could tell me that she has something coming on in Forest Lakes. What she can't do is tell me that she has 1234 Main Street coming on in Forest Lakes. She can't tell me specific property information. All right. And I think that's it. Does anybody else have any questions for us before we, if a property was active and now been withdrawn, but was posted on Facebook, what happens on May 1?
Meaning you have a listing agreement. It's not currently active anywhere in the MLS because it's in the withdrawn status, and you have done pre-marketing. In my opinion, if you have a listing agreement and pre-marketing has occurred, it belongs my opinion, my reading from what I believe I understand from NAR is that it belongs in coming soon because it's been pre-marketed. Now, if the listing is over or you guys have halted the listing and you're going to start it, you're going to list it again in 3 months when all of this is over, certainly it would not have to go there. But it seems to me that if you have a listing agreement and it is pre-marketed in any way, it needs to go into coming soon. Rachel or
So
Abby?
Sasha, we got a clarification on that. It was withdrawn due to the coronavirus. So it seems like that is a longer term or potentially a longer term issue. And honestly, I think that that's something that we're just going to have to take those as they come.
And I would suggest that if it's currently withdrawn, there's an existing listing agreement, and you start marketing again May 1st or after, then it would need to be moved into an active status. But if you did your
Agreed.
marketing April 30th while it was withdrawn, there's no more marketing as of May 1, then you're okay in the withdrawn status.
Agreed.
Right. It's not retroactive. Yes.
Right.
I may have, yeah, not retroactive.
There's a question here about multiple brokerage locations and whether or not I'm going to assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, the person who asked this question, there are multiple brokerage locations, and I assume what they're asking is, can pre-marketing occur within a brokerage or within an office? And the way we have understood this rule from NAR is that within a brokerage, you are able to tell all of the agents, not just within your office, but within that entire brokerage about that property. So that is the only pre-marketing that is allowed under this policy.
Right, because those listings belong to that brokerage.
Mm-hmm. All right, we've got some thank yous, and then we have, so then they need to stop advertising on Facebook, right? Yes, so that is true. And we are actually at the end of our time, so we are going to thank everybody for attending today. We appreciate your attention to this. It is a complicated matter that we have been working on for, well, gosh, since December. And we are going to make sure that your questions get answered, and we're here for you. So ask us whatever questions that you have, and we will answer them as soon as we can. All right, anything else?
That's it. Thank you both.
No,
Okay,
thanks everybody. Everybody hang in there.
Bye everybody, stay safe.